Hey everyone, well this video I'm going to be talking about chainsaw rim sprockets, drive sprockets, all the different configurations, or at least most of the ones that I have access to. I'll even make note here of a couple that I don't have, but I will give honorable mention. These little guys here, very important. This is what determines chain speed and different characteristics for what species of wood you're cutting, whether you're cutting softwood, hardwood, whether you're using a long bar or short bar. I've gone ahead and set up a sort of a show and tell chart here with a layout of all the sprockets, the sizings, whether they're large spline, small spline, or even right down to the still mini spline. And I'll show a few clutch drums here as well, and what these sprockets fit to, and what different classes and sizes of saws more or less. Try and keep it condensed and not ramble on here too long, so we're going to get right at it. Okay, here we go. I got the whole layout here. Pretty much close to it. I'm missing one or two, but for the most part I have a pretty good representation here of all the sizes, and I have everything mentioned in little note cards there beside each sprocket as to sizing and what fits to. And then as you can see over on the far right there, I have a sampling of clutch drums. That's all in the Husqvarna line. Unfortunately I don't have any of my still drums, or I don't have any spare still drums at the moment. Everything I have is on saws, but sizing still follows through, so I can do comparisons and explain to what it goes to. So here we go, we're going to get started. Standard 3/8 what would be called the Husqvarna large spline, or is known industry-wide as a 22mm standard spline. 3/8 7 tooth. Just below it here is a 3/8 8 tooth. Going over to the center section here, would be all your Husqvarna small spline. This would be a 19mm in 325. This is a 7 tooth. 325 8 tooth. And you can also get a 3/8 7 tooth in a 19mm small spline Husqvarna. This would go on like your 262 XPs, 455 Ranchers, all the ones that use the small spline 19mm clutch drum. I don't know if there's an 8 tooth 19mm small spline available. There used to be at one time. I don't know if you can still get them or not. I don't know. That's the one that I don't have, and I've yet to be able to find one. Getting over here on the still side of things. Now in still small saws, in their 50cc saws, and even up into some of their 55 and early 60cc saws, they use what was called a 17mm still mini spline. These are smaller than the Husqvarna small spline. The Husqvarna small spline, like I say, was 19mm. The still mini spline was a 17mm. Now, of course, you could get these in the 325 7 tooth, a 325 8 tooth, and you can also get a 3/8 standard 3/8 7 tooth 17mm mini spline. I have this on a couple of my small still saws. I got one MS260 set up with a full 3/8, and I have a MS261 M-Tronic that's also running a full 3/8 standard. When it got into their larger saws, like the 036s, the newer 036s, MS360, 361, 362, and anything all the way up into their big saws. They also used a standard 22mm clutch drum, so you could use didn't matter, you could interchange these over into the Husqvarna. It's the exact same from the larger still saws. The 22mm clutch drum is the same. You can use sprockets however you choose. Now there's one exception here in the 325s on the Husqvarna and the still side. You can get a 325 9 tooth, that's this one here. This should be, I guess, technically over here, but it's not in the small spline category. This one is actually a large 22 millimeter. The 9 tooth 22 millimeter will fit on any of your 60cc and up saws if you choose to run a 325 setup, and you can. You can run this on a 555 Husqvarna on the newer saws. In the stills, this is what this is here. It's the same thing. These sprockets are interchangeable here. It doesn't matter. They're 22 millimeter. Still, yes, does actually make a branded still sprocket in a 9 tooth 325, and Oregon makes as well. Husqvarna did at one time. I don't know if they still do now, but like I say, with the options, you can get still sprockets or Oregon sprockets in 325 9 tooth. And like I say, that's a 22 millimeter hub or clutch drum. You can run them on a bigger saw if you choose to do that setup. Of course, you had the 404 for the big Husqvarnas, like the 3120s and the still 880 or 881 Magnum saws like that. But they all use a 22 millimeter. As far as I know, they still use a 22 millimeter large spline drum in Husqvarna and in still. So you can run the gamut of any combination of sprockets. Now I'll go ahead and show what clutch drums fit up to what sprockets here, and that I'm going to have to do probably a little bit more of a close-up. I'm trying to do the videoing here with one hand while I'm comparing clutch drums here with the other to sprockets, but we'll get through it here. So anyways, I have a combination of clutch drums, and I'll explain from what saws or classes of saws these come from. These two clutch drums here would be off of 357, 359, 357 XP, of course, 359, or Johnson Red 2156, 2159. They had two different clutch drum options on those saws. And you can see they had the small spline, and they had the standard large spline, the 22 millimeter and the 19 millimeter. You could swap clutch drums and run a large spline, 22 millimeter, 7 tooth, 3/8, or an 8 tooth, 3/8, or if you wanted to, you could even run a 325 9 tooth. In the small drum, I'm just going to move this over here for better clarity. You can go to the Husqvarna small spline. You can run a 325 7 tooth. Fits perfect on there. You can run a 325 8 tooth. You can see. Or, if you want, you can run a 3/8 7 tooth small spline. These are available. Like I said, I don't know if they have the 3/8 8 tooth small spline. Those are rare as hen's teeth. They're hard to find. Like I say, I don't know if they still make them or not. Maybe they do, but I haven't been able to find anything in Oregon's catalog listing. Years ago they had, I do believe, but I don't know if they still do. And like I say, this actually has a little bit more versatility, these small spline drums for the 357s and 359s, because you can run three different combinations of sprockets. You can run 325 and 3/8. With these large spline drum here for the 357, 359, you can run your two different 7 and 8 2 3/8, but in 325 you're limited to having to run only a 9 tooth in 325. Whereas the small drum, if you can find the bigger 8 tooth small spline sprocket, technically you could run 4 different sprockets on this particular small spline drum, whereas this one you can run 3 different types. Now, getting into some little bit more modern saws, I have a drum here for 555 Husqvarna or 562 or the European 560 XP, or the North American or the worldwide Johnson Red 2260 and the 2258s. They all shared this drum, and these were the 22 millimeter large spline drum. Now you can run a 7, an 8 tooth, or the 325 9 tooth. But like I say, as long as they're all in the 22 millimeter Husqvarna large spline, you're good to go. And a little bit of a retro throwback here. This drum is off of an old 630, 670. All those 625, 630, 670 Johnson Reds. And this drum would cross back into a bunch of the 200 series, like the 266, 268, 272s. 262 and stuff, like I say, they got their own special drum. That's different again. That's I'll go ahead and use this note here as a reference for those early 200 series. In the 19 millimeter small spline models, you could run the 55 Rancher series, the 254 XP, all the way up to the 262 XP. That would include your 257, your 261, 262. And that would have went even back into some of your 254, 154s and saws like that. Anything that used a 19 millimeter small spline drum. And these sprockets here, these small spline sprockets, can also be used, like I say, on the 357, 359, if you have the small spline drum for those. And also the 455 modern day Ranchers, they also have the small spline drum. So you can run a combination of 3872 small spline, or a 325 in 8 or 7 tooth. So you've got different options there, what you can do. So we'll just go through this here as a final recap here of what you could all run, about the sizes. I'll do a kind of a close-up here. Sorry if there's a shadow here, but this is how it's going to be. So you have your 22 millimeter 7 tooth 3/8, 22 millimeter 3/8 8 tooth, 22 millimeter 325 9 tooth. In the 325 small spline drum in 19 millimeter, you have a 325 7 tooth, 325 8 tooth, also 19 millimeter, 3/8 7 tooth in 19 millimeter, and like I say, a question mark as to the 3/8 8 tooth in 19 millimeter small spline. I don't know if they're, like I say, if they're still available or not. In the still, your options were 325 7 tooth 17 millimeter mini spline, 325 8 tooth 17 millimeter also mini spline, and a 3/8 7 tooth 17 millimeter still mini spline. And then, like I say, when you got into the larger 55 60cc saws in the still line, you could run a 3/8 7 or 8 tooth, and they were standard 22 millimeter, which was cross-referenceable to the Husqvarnas. And you can also, on some of the bigger stills, you can also run a 22 millimeter 325 9 tooth as well, if you want to go that route, like some guys do in Europe, or even now some guys here in North America are now discovering that they can run these 325 setups on some of the bigger saws. And if you have a really sharp chain and you know how to set them up, you won't be over revving them. I've tried it and it works pretty good, and I'm kind of looking at going a little bit more of that route myself in the future. So there you go. There's your options. Like I say, I'm missing the 404 size sprocket. I don't have a 404. That would also, and the 404 size is in 22 millimeter spline. And all these, whether they're large spline, medium spline, or Husqvarna small spline, or in the still mini spline, all are internal 7 tooth drive on the clutch drums. Doesn't matter whether, like I say, if it's the 22 millimeter or the 19 millimeter or the 17 millimeter mini spline. They all have an internal 7 tooth drive. And when you talk about the outer whatchamacallit, like this one here, this is a 7 tooth, like I say, and then of course the 8 tooth or 8 pin, whatever you want to call it, but it's all based on that pretty much an industry standard. So there you go, folks. I think we're going to call this a video. Hope you found this informative. Laid out a chart here for you so you can see what goes to what saws. One little exception I didn't mention here on the still side of things, some of the early 034s and 036 Pros, early models had also a small spline drum. On the later ones they went to the large spline 22 millimeter, but on some of the early ones, on those 55, 60 cc saws, they actually had a 19 millimeter drum, which would have interchanged with the Husqvarna small splines, 19 millimeter. So that was pretty handy in those days, but unfortunately they discontinued those drums a long time ago. Now coming up here in the future video, I'm probably going to do a follow-up here. I'm going to talk about the gearing of the sprockets, and for whether you're cutting softwood, hardwood, like I say, different bar lengths, and you know, if you're doing a lot of topping or limbing or just a lot of heavy bucking, what its gear ratio is what it is. So whether you prefer chain speed or mid-range, bottom end grunt torque, we all have our preferences and how you sharpen the saw, whether you're running hand filed or square ground chisel chain, or whatever you happen to be running for a combination. But I think for now we're going to call this a video. It's already starting to stretch out a bit here. So anyways, I'd like to say thanks everybody once again for stopping by and checking out another one of my videos, and we'll see you all in the next one.